Well, hello, welcome once again to Pale Blends and Beyond. Thank you for joining us today. And if you do
Thank
like
you
the
for having me.
program, if you do like the programming and what you see in the videos and the artists that I talk to on this show, please hit the like button and also subscribe. A lot of the artists had their heyday back in the 60s and 70s, and they are a lot of them still recording and playing live to this day. So they all have a story to tell. And that's what this show is about. Kevin Odegard is an American singer, songwriter, guitarist, and author. He may most be remembered as having played on Bob Dylan's album Blood on the Tracks. At the time of the release, Kevin and a few other musicians were not given credit for their work on the album. 43 years later, that wrong has been rectified, giving Kevin and the others credit with the release of More Blood, More Tracks in 2018. In the early 70s, he released two solo albums and worked as a brakeman on the Chicago and Northwestern Railroad to make ends meet. During the 70s, his band, the KO Band, toured the Midwest. After a move to Los Angeles, Mr. Odegard worked his way up to executive director of the National Academy of Songwriters, where he worked to protect the rights and earnings of songwriters. In 2004, Kevin co-wrote A Simple Twist of Fate, Bob Dylan, and the Making of Blood on the Tracks. And in 2005, my guest was inducted into the Minnesota Rock Country Hall of Fame. Well, welcome, Kevin.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here and taking time out to visit. Well, take us back to the beginning. Where were you born?
I was born in a wonderful little prairie town called Princeton on the Rum River, the roaring Rum River. And it was the color of rum, but it was really kind of muddy, had a clay bottom. And so I had a rural upbringing. My family were farmers and car dealers, and we ran the bus operation, the school bus operation out of Princeton. So I was involved in all those things peripherally then, and more so as I developed this expensive hobby of playing music later in life.
Yeah.
I used those acquired skills and those inherited skills really keep myself alive.
Yeah. Well, early on, do you remember hearing music in the household?
Yes, my mother was a classically trained concert pianist, and we listened to everything from the Mormon Tabernacle Choir to comedy albums. I remember Nichols and May playing in the house. They were very interesting. She was from the East Coast, and although we were in a small Midwestern town, um, she brought her culture with her. And I learned a lot at her feet and listening to her piano. She played Chopin, Liszt, the whole variety of classical composers. Um, and my brother was also a musical prodigy. He died in 1996, but Steve was a wonderful trumpeter, and he used to play along with Henri Purcell and all the great trumpet concertos. And he'd conduct, he'd put the trumpet down and he'd conduct in the room and tell me the life story of Brahms or Mahler or one of his favorites. So I had uh, that was daytime and into the evening. In the
Yeah.
middle of the night, I had a transistor radio, which came in
Uh,
handy later.
yeah. Yeah.
So I'd hide under the covers in the middle of the night so as not to bother anybody. And in those days, we had the single ear,
Yeah.
headphone. And we were just below the iron range. So there was another kid up on the iron range who had developed the same habit. And I met him later in life. But what we both used to do, I discovered, was tune in to KOMA in Oklahoma City, the Grand Ole Opry, Shreveport, WLS in Chicago, the black stations throughout Texas, um, R&B, a great variety. You had a great variety of music. You had to follow what was beaming into the Iron Range, because the Iron Range was nothing but a gigantic antenna. And in the middle of the night, these clear channel 50,000 watt stations would come booming through the ionosphere into my house and into the house of Abe and Beatty Zimmerman in Hibbing. They had a son who was 10 years older than me.
Okay. I had that same experience. I remember in '69 listening to my transistor. And of course, my parents would come in and turn that off, you know. So I'd turn it down. You know, I kept turning it down. They'd come in a couple more times, you know, and then I couldn't hear it. I had it so low. But I remember hearing Peter, Paul, and Mary leaving on a jet plane.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, yeah.
What was the first record that you ever bought?
Oh, good one. The first one, of course, it was my mother took me to the local Kmart. But I consider this my first one, was the Snoopy versus the Red Baron. I can't remember if it was Snoopy's Christmas or versus the Red Baron, but I got one and then I got the other one a little bit later. You remember the Royal
Great.
Guardsmen? The Royal Guardsmen?
I sure do.
Yeah.
Yeah. They had the outfits.
Yes, they did. Yes, they did. They all dressed up like that. So those are my 1 and 2, and I don't remember in which order. Yeah.
I like that record because my grandfather on my mother's side flew against the Red Baron in World War One. He flew a Sopwith Camel.
Yes, yes.
And he was shot down twice over Belgium and France. And they put him to work entertaining the troops. He played the violin as badly as well as I play guitar.
and they had those 2 songs. They had Sopwith Camel Time. They did,
yeah.
and they also had Down Behind the Lines, which was one of my favorite.
Right.
Yeah. So both of those, yeah. Go ahead.
It had a historical perspective for me, so I latched onto it too. I loved that, and then it was, what was the other one? Well, that was really all there was about that piece of history. But it was in my family, and I knew from storytelling time down here in Florida. I live in the same town as my grandfather did, and we'd come down here around Christmas. And occasionally my brother and sister, older, would stay right through the spring break because my mom didn't want to come home through the blizzard and hit the tundra again in the middle of winter.
Oh no!
So yeah, and he was another musical influence. They used to jam. They'd get Perry Como's guitarist, who lived here in Stewart, Manny Padova. And he'd come over and they'd have martinis and they'd jam and then they'd watch Alfred Hitchcock Presents all in one evening. I've got all that folio of music now. I've got all those individual songs, and I'm proud to say that I met most of the composers during my 20 years or so in Hollywood. I met most of them.
You've met most of them. Oh,
everybody that was still alive. Sammy Kahn took me under his wing when I was working there. I suppose we'll get to that, but he introduced me to everybody who was still around, usually at Nate and Al Deli or at the Hillcrest Country Club at 4:00, where they all gathered and smoked cigars. They didn't drink. They smoked cigars. That's what they did.
Right.
Milton Berle was one of them. Hal Cantor, the writer. Steve Lawrence was in that clique. A lot of great people. And Solly Chaplin, who co-wrote Sound of Music. So I met most of them.
Turnabout's Fair Play. What was the first 45 or album that you bought?
Washington Square by the Village Stompers. Had a big picture.
Oh yeah.
Washington Square in the kind of faux Parisian gate there, and getting a lot of radio airplay. Obviously, the DJs were getting rich playing that song because the Epic promo squad was out there in force on on the road promoting it, and it was then and still is today, I believe. And I get in trouble for this, but I still think it's paper play. I don't think Payola ever went away. I think they changed the name, and they just, they want to promote something, they'll promote it.
Right, exactly.
And that was the first thing that I ever bought, and I think it was closely followed by a series of Bob Dylan albums.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh, and my sister brought home Meet the Beatles.
Oh, all right.
And then February 9th, 1964 came along, and it was all over.
Right.
That was the night that my life as a musician began.
After that, that's right. Yeah. It happened to so many. Yes, at that point. Well, was the guitar the first instrument you learned to play?
Ukulele at Camp Adjua.
Okay. All right.
So it was a wonderful instrument. A guy by the name of Bert White taught me, and all the guys along the tent, they were in tents. They weren't cabins, they were in tents. I stayed for 7 years and became a counselor. And on January 25th, 1965, a little pudgy kid marched into my tent and announced himself, and it was Bobby Rifkin.
Oh.
And he became Bobby Z. He became my drummer first, and then Prince was in the audience. So bye, Bobby. Good luck. That same day, Sunday, the 25th of July, 65, I had my transistor out again.
Yeah.
I was in the woods because they were forbidden. They were contraband. Right. And so I was under the covers, and then out in the woods in the morning before the campers arrived. We were between sessions because I'd stay all summer. And this was between sessions, very quiet moment. I wandered out through the poison ivy and heard this horrendous temper tantrum coming out over the airwaves from KDWB radio in Minneapolis, St. Paul. And it happened to be the 6-minute single, Like a Rolling Stone. So that same day, I met Bobby Z. I got acquainted with Bob Dylan's electric side because I'd already been buying. I bought The Times They Are Changing. I bought Freewheelin' when they came out. I mean, I was interested in that because of the folk music that we were playing. We were playing Tom Paxton songs like Can't Help But Wonder Where I'm Bound at camp or Around the Campfire. So folk, entirely folk, same stuff as I listen to today. Entirely folk origins for me, and classical before that. So that's where I came from musically.
Yeah, I've heard doing these how influential Tom Paxton was. He's another one that so many of these artists have covered, his songs on their albums. Yeah.
There are some good books out about that right now. David Brown has written about Greenwich Village.
Oh.
And I'm halfway through that book right now. It's a lot of Eric Anderson and Tom Paxton and the whole bunch of them who influenced Dylan, who came up very quickly through the ranks.
Did you see my interview with Carolyn Hester?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
I did.
Okay.
Matter of fact, yeah. Okay. Yeah. She figures in the book. You'll like this book.
Oh, yeah.
I get the audio version because I like to listen to it when I'm walking by the creek or maybe driving around running errands. So it's available. It's good. It's a very good book.
I need to check. Go ahead.
Going Electric is also out there. That's, I believe, the basis for this Timothy Chalamet movie. That's another good book that's out there right now.
Right. Is that released already? The
Christmas Day.
Oh, it's coming out.
So we're going to go to the theater for the first time in 5 years and bring Chinese food home.
Yeah. Well, he's a good actor. I hope he does a good job, in that.
I'm looking at the previews, and it looks really good.
Yeah, good, good. Yeah, that's something to look forward to. Well, talk about some other musicians and artists that you were into early on.
Early on, it was the Kingston Trio, Hootenanny TV show, the Lloyd Thaxton show. I never missed Glenn Campbell on the Lloyd Thaxton show.
Right.
My uh, lead guitar player in my band, Jeff Dayton, went on to become Glenn's band leader for 15 years. And of course, Bobby went off with Prince. So pretty much everybody in that group, except me, became famous soon afterward. Um, so folk music again, mostly folk, but that Lloyd Thaxton show, I don't know if you got it where you were. You're probably a different age. You probably got 20 years on me or so. But
Yeah,
the he had Glenn was a guitar player. He didn't sing. He'd
right.
just get on and play a 12-string acoustic version of the hits.
Right, right.
But I never missed it.
Yeah,
It's at 4 o'clock. I'd have to get home from school for that one in the
yeah,
afternoon. Very influential show. And then we had local bands. We had a
yeah.
lively local scene, which included Bobby's big brother, David Rifkin, and that was called the Chancellors. There was another group out of Mankato called the Gestures.
Yeah,
And I'd
yeah.
go see all those people. And speaking of your show on your YouTube channel, my mom kidnapped me from Camp Adjoa one day in year 7, which was 66 in August, and took me to Dayton's 8th floor auditorium in Minneapolis. And I saw Jim McCarty play there for the first time in my life. Now he's a great interviewer. Your interview with him is wonderful. I've listened to it twice. I'm a huge fan. I'm going to see him in May. I'll be at his house in France in May. So we're going to drop by and bother him for half an hour. So bring him a sandwich.
There you go.
How influential was he?
Yeah.
He was the first live act I ever saw that startled the audience with the downbeat.
Oh, okay.
So when they started, all the local bands played first, and they all had their hits on local radio, KDWB, WDGY, Minneapolis, and you get through all that stuff, and it was all very good and professional. And we had a record label in town, Soma, that was very active. But when they got done, and the Yardbirds came up, they played a song called "Ain't Got You."
Yes.
Boom, boom, and now the
Yeah.
bump, bump. The first bump, bump on that kick drum
Yeah.
brought shards of plaster down from the ceiling,
Oh no.
raining on a crowd of teenagers. There's maybe 800, 1,000 teenagers in there. And it was like a snowstorm. It was just, and so it hurt. So
Yeah, it didn't feel good.
he shook the rafters loose. He had it turned up way, way high, and we loved it. Everybody
Yeah, I was gonna
went
say,
crazy
yeah.
for it. They'd never heard anything like this. Even the local bands were agog. They were like, "Wow, that is now we got to do that." It's really something.
Yeah.
So from that day forward, I guess that's the day I went electric.
Yeah.
I started buying electric guitars with my paper route money at the Montgomery Ward store in Princeton, my hometown. And some of them had knobs that didn't go anywhere. They were just chrome knobs on the front of the guitars, and they were for looks.
Yeah.
I didn't know any better.
Uh-huh.
Sears had a good line of guitars. The airline guitars that Sears had were much better, but I learned that later in life. I got a Dan Electro, which looked like my mother's countertop. It was Formica, brown speckled Formica.
Yeah.
And I went through a lot of electric guitars at that point. And but Jim McCarty was was a startlingly wonderful drummer, and he still is today. He's a super human being, wonderful guy.
Yes, he is. He's very nice. Yeah, I was really surprised that he was open to talk with me. He's one of those that I was like, well, I'll ask him, but I don't think he'll say yes. And there you go. You know, he was open to
Yeah,
it.
he's warm.
Yeah, so it shows what kind of human being he is. Well, obviously, as you mentioned earlier, Dylan was a big influence early on. Uh, in university, you were going to University of Minnesota, and you dropped out. And then talk about hitchhiking to Greenwich
Yeah.
Village.
Me and my girlfriend at the time, Nancy Bunt, stuck our thumbs up and hitchhiked several times to New York and Boston, where we got involved in the transcendental meditation scheme,
Yeah.
which, you know, evolved into less pleasant things that we don't need to go into, but
Right.
these cult type organizations. And I met a lot of the people that we later that we would later read about. Um, among them, Baba Ramdas, and Nancy met another one, and later had some adventures there. But we were seekers. We were not into the drug scene. We were more into being healthy and conscious and evolving and enlightening
Yeah.
ourselves.
Speaking of that, I wanted to real quick. I had last weekend. I had part 2 of an interview with Jeff Levin. You know that name, Jeff Levin?
I don't.
Okay. Anyway, he's out in California. He was in a band called People.
Okay.
And back in the day, and he and his brother got caught up in Scientology. And speaking of cults, yeah, what you were just talking about, right? And so he has a documentary coming out about that, and should be
Careful.
pretty soon.
Careful, Jeff.
Right. But
they're dangerous.
Right, he was in it for many years, but he did get out. Yeah, he got out, and it's recounting his stories and the being deprogrammed and all that stuff. So yeah, it's very interesting talking to him. That will be coming up shortly. We'll talk about once you got there to Greenwich Village, you played live in clubs.
Mm-hmm.
What were some of the clubs?
What we didn't know was this was 70, 71. It's funny we didn't run into Dylan at that point in time because he was around a little bit, just tiptoeing around town a little bit. Putting together, well, he ultimately put together New Morning during that period of time. I think it was 72 probably. But by the time we left, I had a recording contract in my pocket, and I had done the demo at Studio A&R Studio A, which was Columbia Records 7th Avenue establishment, at which Bob Dylan recorded the vast bulk of his early material, all of the 60s stuff, except the Asylum record, which just preceded Blood on the Tracks. But it was a cavernous, big, huge studio. We were in Studio B, which was a little smaller. But I became friends later in life. Now I'm friends with the engineer who actually did the New York sessions for Blood on the Tracks.
Oh, okay.
That was a wonderful experience coming home with a recording contract in my pocket. I was able to call up my friend Stan Kipper and the people you hear on the first album, which is this one.
Yes, right, right.
And some of it worked. Yeah. One of the songs, the longest song, got a lot of airplay.
Right.
It was we were just jamming.
Yeah.
Just got a lot of airplay. It was compared to a poor man's Jefferson Airplane and various other things. But
yeah, I wanted to go over a few of the tracks that I like and get your recollections, comments, maybe inspiration.
I'm ready.
You ready? Okay. Let me ask you first because the picture. Did you have red hair when you were younger?
Oh yeah, fire
Okay.
engine red.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay. Mine was brighter red than it is when I was younger. Got it from my mom.
Mhm.
But as I got older, it became more auburn, darker. And then now
Yeah.
it's starting to turn gray. So, but it's still I was a lot bright. Yeah, my hair was a lot brighter red when I was young too. So well, from the debut album, self-titled, 1971, I like all the different instruments being used, especially the flute. That's a nice addition, to many of the
Two
tracks.
players on that, Max Swanson and Larry Ankrum.
Yeah.
Uh, the harmonica is Tony Glover, who was
Yes, yes.
Bob's friend.
Right.
And that was just because David Zimmerman, by that time I had hunted down and captured David Zimmerman as my manager.
Yeah, yeah.
His name was in the paper because he produced an earlier album by a guy by the name of Michael Lesak
Okay.
on Columbia Records. And when my mom showed me that article, and she said, "Well, I gotta get in touch with this guy."
Yeah.
And so I did, and they became friends. And David and I became friends, and his uh, his help on this first album got me Tony Glover, a very very prominent writer and harmonica player, Kerner Rain Glover, influential in Greenwich Village in the early '60s. So, what songs in particular did
Oh,
stuck
well,
out to you?
so what stuck out to me was the intro and the outro, cracks
Mm-hmm.
cracks song.
Yeah,
Uh, but both of those, I really enjoyed those instrumentals on that. Really nice, really nice.
Crack was a rap brother.
Oh, okay.
I was in a fraternity called Chi
Uh-huh,
Psi at the University of Minnesota for 1 year.
uh-huh.
Um, but I made some very close lifelong friends there, and I sat with him one night. We sat up late, and I wrote it. I said, "Okay, I'll name it after you." So not much of a story, but it was used on local CBS station as a theme song for various human interest um, programs over the years.
Is that
Never got
right?
paid for it, but they used it. I was flattered that they used it.
Yeah, yeah. It's a nice tune, nice melody in that. Yes, Forget the Waste. That's another one that I really enjoy.
That was yeah, that's an unusual song. Really a collaboration with the piano player because we're playing with chords and different chordings. Greg Anderson was somebody I'd met about this time, and he had a very fluid melodic sense, and I learned a lot from him. And really, this song wouldn't have happened without him. Um, the lyrics, kind of a almost a psychedelic blend
Yes,
of
yes, I hear
jumping around in time. He
that.
jumps around.
I can hear that. But I hear that the melodies throughout all these songs that you just referred to, you know.
Well, on this album, it's all about Greg Anderson on that piano. I just loved
Yeah,
jamming with him.
yes. Speaking of the keyboard, A Man's Work. I really like the keyboard on that. Yeah, yeah,
People like that song, and it gets a lot of play on iTunes
yes.
and Apple Music. It is kind of jazzy. It's the closest I ever got to kind of going in the jazz direction was that one, and Fathers and Sons is a little bit like it,
Yeah,
um, but they're the same flavor.
right.
They're
That was my next pick was Fathers and Sons.
yeah, people like both of those equally well. I can't explain that. I don't know why.
Yeah,
I am is just me and Tony Glover jamming in the studio,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and that was just an existential. Uh, it was like Neil Diamond's I Am I Said. It was the
Right.
same statement of being.
Right.
I am, therefore I exist, or something.
Right.
You
Right.
know?
Yeah. Keep it simple. That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah. Down to basics. Right. Right.
And then Me and the Blind Man, that's Greg.
Right.
Greg
That's
was the
another one.
blind piano player.
That's another one. Yeah. Well,
But the one that got all the airplay and a lot of regional airplay
mhm,
was When I Get Home. I have no
mhm.
idea why. It was just the times. It got, FM radio was really on the rise at that point, and disc jockeys like to pop that on and take a break.
Yeah. Right.
It was 10 minutes and 52 seconds long.
Right. They could just step away. Well, like John Peel, I'm talking to the UK musicians, how influential and how he championed so many artists and bands over there. He would play a whole side of an album. He'd do that.
Yep.
Just leave it on.
Yeah, I've heard of him. Yeah.
Do that. Well, a couple of years later, maybe 3 years, December of '74, you got a phone
Mhm.
call. You got a phone call from somebody.
Well, I was trying to watch TV, and
Yeah.
this was a nuisance call. For sure, it was the crew caller from Chicago Northwestern Railroad. Wanted me to ride on a boxcar all the way down to Oldwine, Iowa, and it was 0 degrees before the wind blew.
Yeah.
So it was the wind chill factor was, I don't know, 10 or
Yeah.
15 degrees below 0 at that point. I did not want to get on a boxcar and
No.
ride south, so I avoided the call until Kojak ended.
Okay.
And then I picked up, and it was David Zimmerman. And he said, well, hey, I got a favor to ask. I said, yeah, what can I do for you? I would have done anything for David by then, because he had been such a loyal and wonderful friend. He said, I'm looking for a guitar. And I started picking up clues in his rhetoric at this point. I'm looking for a guitar. I said, yeah, well, like, you're looking for a guitar? You are looking for a guitar? He said, yeah, I'm looking for a 1934 Martin 0024 Joan Baez model with gut strings. Where can I find one of those? And I said, I don't know. Maybe I should just check around. And then there was whispering going on in the background on the other end of the phone.
Uh-huh.
And he came back on and said, yeah, call me back. Make a phone call and call me back. See if you can find it. I really want it. So I'm suspicious now.
Yeah.
And I hung up and called Chris Weber, who was keeping late hours at the Podium Tobacco and Guitar Shop in Dinkytown. And I said, Chris, I'm looking for this special guitar. He said, well, what are you looking for? And I told him I'm looking for a 1934 Martin Joan Baez model, the small body. He said, well, I got a 0042 with steel strings behind me. Do you want to buy it? I said, no, I want to rent it or borrow it. He said, well, I can't do that. I don't own it. It's on consignment. By the way, Kevin, how did you know this guitar was on my wall? I said,
Yeah.
I didn't. I'm just taking a shot in the dark here, Chris. And he was on me after that. And he would tell the story when we did concerts later in life together, how he figured out, he reasoned that, and he got there before I did. He said, this guitar is for Bob Dylan, isn't it? I said,
he knew.
I said,
Yeah.
gee, I hadn't thought of that, but it's his brother asking for it. So David was very happy to hear that I'd found it. And yes, Chris would loan it, but he has to go with it. I have to babysit that guitar because it's not mine. And I have to make sure it comes back in the same condition that it leaves the store in.
Yeah.
So the owner doesn't know. And I'll charge you X number of dollars and we'll make it work. Well, things didn't work out for the guitar, but they worked out for Chris, who got to the sessions with me, and there was Bob Dylan. Then the very next night, I mean, this all happened within 24 hours, about 28 hours. So we're at the session, and he struck up a great chemistry with Bob immediately. Bob recruited him, hauled him off to the vocal booth, and taught him all the songs one by one. The first one was Idiot Wind, and that took longer because Bob was really unsure, and his brother was terribly unhappy with what had happened in New York. He didn't like the soft approach that Bob had taken. We all liked, the bootlegs we were hearing because it was a new Bob album, and of course, Bob, in our view, Bob didn't make bad albums.
Yeah, right.
Make weak albums, but David was interested in pleasing Goddard Lieberson, the president of Columbia, and coming up with a hit, something like Bob had done with Like a Rolling Stone. And Bob got into that idea, and they slammed into Idiot Wind, and it was discordant. It was an awkward first chord. It was a C minor, and Chris did a little work on it and made it sound less awful. Someone's got it in for me. Well, 7 takes later, they had it in the can, and I was not on it. I was in the control booth with my jaw on the floor. It was all still very new to me, and the record jackets that were already printed, there was one in the control booth, and we saw them. Of course, our names weren't on them.
Yeah.
But long story short, that's how the whole thing happened. I didn't come into my 6 minutes of fame until Monday night. That's the entire length of my legitimate musician career was 6 minutes long.
Yeah.
It started with the first note of Tangled Up in Blue and ended with the fade out of the harmonica solo.
Yes.
On the 3 chords.
Yeah. Well, were there, you mentioned 7 takes on the other track. Were there multiple takes on Tangled Up in Blue?
1 take, and Bob played it, and we played it all the way through, and I got to play on it because David said, hey, why don't you let Kevin play on this one? Because he was playing the role of my manager at that point. And Greg Inhofer, the keyboard player, had put in a word for me because I had gotten him the gig. Okay. So I had gotten Greg the gig, Chris the gig, and Chris indirectly brought Peter Ostrusko in later in the second session. So there are 3 people now that I'm responsible for, and I'm looking at the album jacket already printed and going, uh-oh, this is going to take some doing for me to get names on jackets that are already printed. Because I'm at fault here. I got these guys the gig. We all got union scale, but for 44 years, nobody got credit. Yeah. They misspelled our names on a couple of greatest hits collections, but those 6 minutes of Tangled Up in Blue started in G. We got all the way through it, but that wasn't magical. And when Bob looked at me, he looked right at me because he really wanted to suss me out now. He wanted to get some kind of an idea of why is this guy here. So he looked me right between the eyes and he said, so what'd you think? And I said, well, I forgot where I was. I had a Neil Young flannel shirt on or something, and I was starting to sweat a little bit. I just said, it's passable, Bob. It's passable. And he said, passable? What do you mean? What is that supposed to mean? Passable? So I said, yeah, it'll work, but I think it would be better if we, and I just pulled this one out of my ear. I think it'd be better if we go up a key. You can reach for the notes a little more. It's in a higher, more energetic key. The song went from it went from Appalachia in the key of G to rockabilly in the key of A.
Okay.
It went to it took a geographic journey, and in the moments that it took to travel that distance, it became Tangled Up in Blue that we know today. And we took that live, and Paul Martinson recorded it live to 2-track in the studio on a Revox 1/4-inch tape. And when the time came to mix these things, Bob had no time for it. And Paul had already processed and done some things with Idiot Wind, but Bob got very bored by the end of Idiot Wind. And he looked at Paul and he said, you know what I want to hear? I want to hear Tangled Up in Blue, just like the acetate you sent me home with. Send that to Santa Maria. Send that to the pressing plant. And he did. He sent a safety mix to Santa Maria. And that's the one you heard for 44 years.
That's the one. Wow.
It's live. Yeah, we were just stunned at the end of that one, because it really was a brilliant performance. He was into it. He was just Charlie Chaplin, just dancing all over the place and just completely plugged into the emotion of Tangled Up in Blue and the storytelling. And there's another one. I mean, that time shifts too. It goes to first person, third person. That jumps around from one point of view to the next. But the most incredible 6 minutes of guitar I've ever played in my life. I did not improve after that. People ask me a lot, well, so I suppose you got better after that, didn't you? And I said, nope, never got better. That was it. That was it right there. Never before and never since have I played that well, because that was the moment.
Yes.
We were in the moment. We were in the rapture, if you will, of that piece of art. And I would never even be able to duplicate what I did do. And I didn't hear it until 2003.
Yeah.
When Steve Berkowitz remixed it for the SACD, Super Audio CD, I was able to separate my guitar out into the right rear channel. And when I cranked it up, Bob and I are playing in tandem. We're working off of each other's energy. He's looking at me, I'm looking at him. I'm doing the diddly ding figure that I'd stolen off of Joy of Cooking record the night before. Tony and Terry from Berkeley.
Oh yes, I have one of their CDs. Yeah, like a best
Way of Cooking.
Yeah, yes.
Well, Midnight Blues. Yeah. And if you speed it up to triple speed, that's the intro of Tangled Up in Blue. Diddle-da-dum, diddle-da-dum.
Yes.
So, but halfway through the song, by the end of verse 4 out of 6 in Tangled Up in Blue, I'm doing the down strum, Bob's doing the up strum. It's like we're one person, and there's dead on eye contact. He's singing the lyrics by heart. He knows what he's doing, and we're finishing each other's musical sentences.
Right.
And that's what makes a great jam. That's what makes a great, and that was a great moment. That's why I say those 6 minutes. That's it.
That's right.
That's all there ever was.
Never to be repeated. No, or better.
No, I was never as inspired and switched on
Yeah.
as I was in that moment of time, because I was all clarity and very, very tuned in to what Bob was doing. Everybody was. We had the world's best jazz rhythm section, Billy Peterson and Bill Berg. Billy Peterson had to leave every night at 9 o'clock to go to his Longhorn gig downtown because they didn't care who Bob Dylan was.
Yeah. Yeah.
You show up at the gig or you don't have a gig,
Right.
you know.
Right.
And they were very, very good. Now that's jazz. They played Natural Life is the name of the group that they had at that time, and the two that got along the best were Bill Berg, an underclassman of Bob Dylan's at Hibbing High School.
Oh, is that right? Is that right?
Yeah, underclassman, and had seen the chords. What was it? The Golden Chords or something. Bob's group from younger. He'd seen Bob play in the auditorium at Hibbing High, but he was an underclass. He was like 4 years younger. He had a magical approach that he has to teach other drummers. Now we're doing the 50th anniversary coming up here of Blood on the Tracks.
Okay.
But Berg had a special knack, especially on Tangled Up in Blue. If a note is this long, he hits it right here at the very end of it.
Okay. Okay.
And it just sucks you in.
Yeah.
And he was playing brushes on that song. And by playing at the end of the note rather than right on time in the middle, it's magnetic. It draws you into the music. He did the same thing on Idiot Win. I just didn't know what he was doing yet. Once you play with Bill Berg, you realize you're playing with a magician.
Yes.
And Chris Webber's 12-string parts were brilliant. Everybody played the best I've ever heard any of them.
Right.
And I was the worst. I was the worst musician in the room. So I played better than I usually play. That's what happens.
They help elevate your ability. Being around those other musicians. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and Blood on the Tracks is Bob Dylan's best-selling album of his career. That's got to feel proud to you looking back on that, being a part of that.
It was a happy accident.
Yeah. Wow. Sometimes things happen like that.
People want me to play at parties.
Yeah. Yeah.
No. Well, you played on this. You must be good. No, I'm not good. You don't want to hear me play.
Yeah.
And guitar players hate me because I got the gig.
Right. They were
especially
envious.
Early on, I learned to stop talking about it. Like by the time I got to Hollywood in 78, I didn't say a word about being on Blood on the Tracks because there's no name on the cover. And in Hollywood, if you're lying, you're dying.
You're dying.
If you're caught being a fraud, I mean, there's a lot of that going around there. But if you're caught with a false credit or, you're polishing your resume. So I never trumpeted that fact until I did the book. And then the book got some notice. And then in 2018, obviously, we finally got our names on the dugout thing.
Right. Finally. And correct spelling too. Yeah.
Yeah, I was Ken Odegard for a while, and then in the Greatest Hits Volume 3. And there was another compilation.
Yeah.
The Essential Bob Dylan.
Let me ask you this. I didn't ask you, how far did you grow up from Bob?
Oh, I calculated this. I think it's 120 miles.
Okay.
Hibbing is a ways up 169, same road.
Yeah.
So I would sit on the armory with my Montgomery Ward's guitar with knobs that didn't work.
Yeah.
And you just strum an electric guitar, you can barely hear it. And my friend Jim would sit there with me, and we'd watch the deer carcasses go by going south after the hunt in the fall. And that was 169 was Main Street in Princeton. How many times were we sitting there when Bob Zimmerman drove
Yeah.
by or rode by in a Greyhound bus? Because
Right.
Hibbing was where Greyhound was started. And so he'd be on a bus down to St. Paul or Minneapolis hundreds of times right through Main Street, Princeton. I often think about that, how many times we must have ignored him.
Right. He went right by you. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I wanted to talk a little bit about your 75 album, Silver Lining.
Okay.
That one was much more of a country and western album. I think your first one had a lot of folk tendencies, leanings. This one was more steeped in country and western.
I was all the way into George Jones by the time that record came along. and countrypolitan music.
Yeah. Yeah.
Billy Sherrill's Countrypolitan.
Yes.
And so Merry-Go-Round and a lot of the things on that record, on the original record, were influenced in that way. There was some rock on it. The middle was a kind of a rock out jam. And again, you're hearing the flute and the steel guitar this time opening and closing the record.
Yes.
And so that was it was the same people. It was Larry Ankrum and in this case it was Mark Lee, I believe, on the pedal steel. But same type of feels there, but we ventured a little further into the country idiom, lyrically especially, throughout the record. Have you ever seen this version?
No, I haven't. No, I haven't.
This one has.
Now, is that the one with the 26 tracks on it?
Yeah, this one's got, yeah.
Okay, I was going to ask you about that. Now, are the later tracks on there you and the KO band?
Most of them.
Okay,
yeah,
that was
during that same period of time. I was writing my butt off at that time, and a lot of them are just as good as what's on the original album, or better.
Or better. I was going to say better. I think better. That's my opinion. I like the later tracks on there. Okay, well, you answered my question. But from the original album, I like Rock and Roll Man. That's one of my favorites. Visions of You. Oh, go ahead. You had something to say about it.
Visions of You is about my first wife. Rock and Roll Man was about Stan Kipper.
Yeah.
The drummer.
Yeah.
Who plays on that song.
Yeah. And then
we made friends.
44. That's another one.
44. That's Stan's favorite song. He did that song in his other band. It was produced by Andrew Gold once with Stan's crew.
Yeah.
In Los Angeles.
Yeah.
It's kind of a fun deal. We did that song right up until I quit performing in 2017.
Okay. Well, he has good taste. It's his favorite. And then the song Silver Lining did quite well. Got a lot of national airplay.
Yeah, that's David Rifkin's song, Bobby's older brother. What a family. There's a movie there. The mother of 3 sons, who was born without her left arm and went on to achieve great things, not just in her own life, but she inspired 3 highly successful sons. Stephen Rifkin, the middle son, there's David is the oldest. Stephen is still the film editor of choice for James Cameron. Did the Avatar stuff. He did all the Norman Jewison stuff earlier on. He is probably the premier film editor in Hollywood. David, and of course Bobby, who drummed for Prince in the Revolution. So 3 sons from one family, high achievers, incredible. Incredible
Yes.
story.
Yes. And you got a couple of them to work with you. You're,
Yeah, well, and Steve, I take credit for Steve's career too,
yeah.
because he'd come over and play on television until 3 in the morning at my house. He lived up on Crescent Heights, and I lived down out Pico, a little ways from him in Los Angeles. And so he'd come over and play Zelda or one thing or another, and developed his motor skills under my tutelage and in Los Angeles.
Right.
Okay, he always won, but I
You
gave him
take credit. You take credit for that.
I take credit for that.
Well, one more tune off of the original album, Vinny's tune, another nice instrumental.
Mhm. Yeah, I like that one.
Who was Vinny? Was that written about someone?
You ever seen the picture of Like a Rolling Stone recording session with all the guys sitting in the booth?
Oh, yes, I have. Yes, I have. Yes, I have.
You can look it up online. You can Google
Yeah.
it right now and find it. It is a bunch of guys listening to playbacks. There's Albert Grossman and all the usual people. Tom Wilson is there. Yeah, it was still Wilson is there. Yeah. It's not Bob Johnston yet. It's Wilson. So in a chair, sitting down in the middle is Vinny Fusco.
Okay. Okay.
He was Don Kaysen's business buddy from New York. Don Kaysen, who's known as Don Kingsley, financed my first album, the 1971 record. And Vinny went on to do great things at CBS television networks and Viacom. But that's Vinny. And I was trying to impress Vinny at that time because I knew where the money came from. And I called it Vinny song.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That's where that comes from.
It was
Well,
a good song anyway, but I called it Vinny song, just kind of let's tip the hat to the people who are paying the check.
there you go. There you go. There you go. Well, that's nice to do that. A lot of times, I don't think it's done enough. The 14 extra tracks on there, you just kind of clarified
You should
that.
get this. Email me your address and I'll send
Oh,
this to
okay,
you.
great. That would be
Yeah.
wonderful. Well, I saw this on your YouTube channel where it was, I saw 26 tracks. I said, is that like a double album? That'd be even more than a double album. So then,
The
yeah,
the guys who did it are from Korea, and they said, there's 80 minutes on a CD, and you've only got 24 or 25 here. Can you give us some more stuff and we'll fill out with bonus tracks? I said, well, I happen to have recorded a third album for which I was going to use a Peter Max cover, another Donald Case in New York, Vinny Fusco story, because I'd met Peter and his wife during the Transcendental Meditation phase in New York. It never came to pass because the success of Silver Lining did not inspire a sequel.
yeah.
I put my own stuff out now, so it's on iTunes and Apple Music and something like 27 other stores. It's streaming everywhere, and I'm making nothing. I just want people who like it to hear it.
Right, right. Well, I wanted to go over the ones that I like, of those extra tracks on there, and I do like those better, I have to say, than the actual original
That's
album.
why they went on there. I was
Okay.
trying to correct, I was trying to make a do-over. That's what it was to me.
Okay.
Glad
I got to listen.
I Don't Want to Go is a great song.
That was my first one. I was I was going to say that's a nice. I liked a lot of your more mellower tracks, but that's a nice upbeat track.
Oh yeah, that song broke up the band. Either Jeff's or my fist went through the door of the recording studio over control of the mix on that one. fisticuffs, literally fisticuffs. We never played as a band again
All right.
uh,
Wow.
in the studio, but that song lives on, and people still like it.
Yes, yes.
Uh,
Life on Mars is another one.
yeah, kind of. That's Lightfoot.
Yeah.
It's I followed Gordon Lightfoot around for a long time,
Oh,
and I'd show up at his concerts, and he'd put up with me backstage and hang around on the lounge piano at the hotel. And we had at that time I had a friend named Fred Crone who did all the local concerts in Minneapolis along Hennepin Avenue downtown. So he had the Lightfoot connection, and I thought I was Gordon Lightfoot for many years, but I like Gordon just as much as I like Bob,
oh,
and I thought he was just uh,
I do too. I love, and a lot of his earlier material that don't really get played that much. Really grateful that
does in my house. I wear him out.
you were it out there.
Yeah, he's always on the player, and in my car.
Yes.
Life on Mars, Gideon's Bible, Too Many Nights. Um, they're all Gordon. They're all
The
Gordon influenced.
the
All
the
of them.
other road is another one that I like.
Oh, that's a good one. Um, yeah, it doesn't get a lot of play, but
It should. I think it should.
it's an interesting song.
And I'll get to my favorite tracks of your material are the last few. That old guitar,
Yeah,
that's a great, wonderful track. One of your best. I think that's one of your best.
I think it's about John Denver. I think that's about John Denver. Once he got a TV show,
Yeah.
he kind of disconnected in a way, and he became an MC, and not so much this guy. He married a woman from Minneapolis, and he was around a lot. And he was so nice to my parents. He was a really great guy. Um, so I think that's about him. It's either about him or Glenn Campbell. I haven't figured out which, but Glenn never got old for me. Glenn,
Oh, me either.
yeah.
And then
So it's about,
and John Denver as well. I love all of this material, most all of it. Fleeting Thing, another top track, along with that old guitar. One of your best. I think that's one of your best. Fleeting Thing.
in the live Silver Lining. I don't know how that worked, but we played right in the studio, Sound 80. We were in the same studio we made Tangled Up in Blue in.
Yeah.
It's the same road, but it
And
was a
then
live recording.
Looking for a Blue Sky, another one I really like.
Yeah, I like that one too. It's kind of jaunty,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
and
yeah.
and it has some humor in it.
Right, right. And then the one,
But,
the very last one that I really, really like, Cold Hard Wind.
well, that's a there's a that's a funny song. Uh, uh, Nobody in my family ever liked that song in particular, but it was like a verse out of the Bible for the KO band.
Yeah,
And in subsequent years, when we put the KO band back together for these summer shows that we did with Dylan for 17 years, Dylan material, that was called the Blood on the Tracks Live Band. We'd still do. Have you seen the video of that song?
yes, I have. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I
We'd
have.
still do Cold Hard Wind. What nobody, including the two guys from New Ulm, Minnesota, knew about the song was that we all thought it was about the Donner Party.
Oh, okay, okay. I can hear
So
that. Yeah,
it was
yeah,
dark humor for us,
yeah. Right.
but we got so into it and telling the story that all of our wives and girlfriends and the people who love us frown
Yeah.
when it comes on or when we start to play it, because, that's how it ends.
Yeah.
So it's
Right. Right.
it's just it's our favorite though. You can anybody in the band, Bobby in particular, Gary. Gary says it's a song as big as All Outdoors, and it
Right.
is. These
It
these
is.
two guys that wrote it were signed by a guy by the name of John Valinkity Music, who was in the first studio I used, um, ASI up in North Minneapolis. Valinkity had some hits. Jeannie Seeley with "Satin Sheets to Lie On,"
Oh,
"Satin
yeah.
Pillows to Cry On," and but his other stuff that never got covered in Nashville was even better. He's got what I call a secret album, which I play at least a couple times a year, that David produced, Rifkin, and it is a wonderful, wonderful record. Something old, something new, something borrowed, something blue. I mean, great titles, great lyrics, and it was just fun to be around him. He died young, but he was the originator of. Uh, he brought us Cold Hard Wind because he thought that would be good for us, and we recorded it for the sequel to Silver Lining, which never happened.
It didn't happen. Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
no, we used the Peter Max poster later for Summer of Love concert that we did 2017, but that Peter Max cover kind of went to waste because we never got to use it.
Yeah. It's got a great chorus. That song does. Yeah.
Yeah, we get emotional, we get choked up when we sing
Yeah.
it. It's emotional for us, but I think if I brought that idea up to the writers, one of them just passed away this last year, John Garris. They'd be insulted.
Okay.
So we never really hit them with it. Is that about the Donner Party?
Yeah. Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
We never
Right.
really wanted to, offend them.
Yes.
They're
Yeah.
like, I mean, I'm a small town kid, and so are they. And you can take things the wrong way, especially nowadays.
Right.
You can take things the wrong way. It's we didn't want to insult them because we adored that song.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh no, you didn't want to, but
Although if
it's
my wife knew that I was talking about it right now, she'd shut us down.
oh, would she? Would
She'd
she?
say, "Don't talk about that song."
Okay. Well, hopefully she's busy doing something else. She can't hear us. Well, we kind of skipped over your working as a brakeman. Did you want to relate some stories maybe from your time working on the railroad?
uh it was as romantic as it might seem that it was. I met all the characters, but it was like my career in the music business. I met all of my heroes. I met three of the Beatles. I met everybody I admired, and I loved them all. Uh, all of the creatives, everywhere I went, including on the railroad, because I collaborated on some writings with some of the guys on the railroad. Um, they were all really easy to blend in with and to get comfortable with, and they were all comfortable with me because I was like, well, them. The managers, not so much. The handlers,
Yeah.
they were a little chilly, but I had enough panache and moxie to break through and wear an Armani suit and flip a switch for a while and get along with all those guys because I was a lobbyist for songwriters for all those years, and but it was all fake. That was
Yeah.
that was not the real me was backstage.
Yeah.
hanging out with Michael McDonald or, Burt Bacharach or somebody like that,
Yeah.
meeting the heroes of my youth, meeting the people that I admired so much.
Yeah.
Breaking through the protective barriers around them. Once you pierce it,
Yeah.
you're in. I mean, if you're in somebody's circle, you're in, because they're all just like me, all of them, everybody, even the Beatles, they're just like me. Paul is the gregarious one. He's very sociable. He can work any room in the world. Ringo, I knew kind of during his party phase, so he wouldn't remember anything except when I was driving a trolley years later in downtown Minneapolis. I got off a trolley and there was Ringo, and he was taking the tour.
Okay.
So I took him on a trolley tour and showed him. I just he and Barbara, his wife, were there, and I shut the trolley down for everybody else to give him a private tour. And we had a good time, but he didn't remember any of the Hollywood stuff. George was my favorite Beatle, always was. I was backstage with George at the Billboard Music Awards in 1992, where he was given a special award. And he was coming in 92. Was it 92? Yeah. He was just coming off the Traveling Wilburys buzz. Right. And they were all happy together. Jeff Lynne was back there. Tom Petty was on this side of me. A joint was going around the room. And I took it, and I don't know whether I inhaled or not, but I held it because George was busy.
Yeah.
And it began to burn down. The ash.
Yeah.
So Jeff Lynne is across the table and he starts going.
Yeah. Get his attention.
So I dashed it in my drink and waited for George to finish his business and handed it to him. But as much as I was agog about George, I was always a super fan. I don't think I could have carried on a conversation with him. I regret that, because reading so much about him now, as I do, I read every book about George. I read who he really was, and I should have made an effort there, because he was a human being.
Yeah. Well, going back to my transistor radio days from '69, I remember hearing also something, Beatles something. And that, then finding out it was George, and it was sad that he was just relegated to like one track per album, writing. He should have been more.
There was no love lost with Paul McCartney and George. People don't often say that, but I do. Yes, nobody cares. There was no love lost there. They had a difficult relationship their whole lives. The guy I stayed away from, and I was in the room with him several times, was John Lennon, because his reputation for being grouchy preceded him. I didn't want to. I didn't want to get into it. I stayed on the other. I stayed over by the food table. The other regret that I have about being in Hollywood for 20 years is I didn't bring my Walkman, my recording Walkman, with me everywhere. Right, I brought it some places. I sat next to Jimmy Webb when he wrote "If These Walls Could Talk." And we played it for a room full of his peers, who all their names. Yeah. And for the first time, and I pressed record once or twice at Nate Nell's Deli, and I never brought it to the Hillcrest Country Club because it was disrespectful. Yeah. But I regret not running it 24/7 during the time that I was there, because I would have a lot of great quotes. These guys were very nice, rich in spirit people. Right. A lot of fun to be around. Yeah. Do you have any stories, any particular artists that you helped, or you were really an advocate for? Or,
really?
I helped in a general way anybody that held a copyright, and they all knew it. Lionel Richie, uh, uh, Donna Summer, they were all part of, I mean, they were my bosses.
Yeah.
So I worked for them. Um, the board of directors was like John Bettis, Alan and Marilyn Bergman. I answered to them. I guess my favorite boss was Lamont Dozier of
Oh,
Holland Dozier Holland,
right.
the American Beatles,
Yeah.
songwriting wise.
Oh, yeah.
So all of them I enjoyed. I got much closer for a time with Stephen Bishop and to a lesser extent Andrew Gold and that group of people. Um, Bishop and I palled around a lot. We do things, but the closest friend I had in those 20 years was Jerry Goffin,
Okay.
uh, who was married to Carole King for their great productive songwriting years, and then he went on to write with Michael Masser more hits. He was a, a really nice guy, um, quiet, and we'd just go to movies together and with our wives and just relax and chill. He was a very very nice person to me, and we were close. Hard to describe why you enjoy a close friend like that, but he was he uh, he was the friendliest of everybody. He was always, he'd always take my calls, and and we had fish fries where everybody would come in the back. I'd go tuna fishing and come back with fresh tuna, and all the songwriters would be in my backyard. And uh, so it was a community that I was involved with. I was also raising a family at the time, so it was that took a lot of my time too, because I spent a lot of time on the road, spent a lot of time out at night, spent a lot of time schmoozing, working rooms,
You had to do
ASCAP, BMI. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
I,
you mentioned Andrew Gold. Remember his hit "Lonely Boy" when it came out,
yeah,
and the album was so interesting. What's wrong with this picture? Do you remember the album?
sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Everything is wrong with the
Right.
picture.
I don't think I ever picked every single thing. I would keep going back. I know I missed something. I know, but yeah, this is really the art. How they did the trick photography. They did that on that. It was really
What a
nice.
family he came from. Marnie Nixon and Ernest Gold, the composer of Exodus theme. He was a preteen, I believe. He was a young kid, 12 maybe. Yeah. When the Beatles came through Beverly Hills, and he went to a party and met the Beatles when he was just a kid. Paul remembered him.
Did he? Did he?
Yeah,
Wow.
forever after that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he had hits.
And then, but he died young. So,
He did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's been almost a decade now.
Yes, it has been a while. Well, in 2004, you co-wrote "A Simple Twist of Fate," Bob Dylan and the Making of Blood on the Tracks. How long was that in the works before it was actually published?
Oh, only 2 years.
Oh,
Gary Diamond, my friend who just passed away, was on the phone with me, and he said, "Hey, why don't you get together with this guy, uh, who the guy who became my collaborator on that book, and Andy Gill was his name.
yeah.
He's written a piece for Mojo
Oh,
on the
okay.
New York sessions." He
Yeah.
said, "You take his stuff from New York and you write about the Minneapolis sessions, and that's a book." And so through friends, I wrote up a book proposal, got an agent named Paul Bresnick who found a deal, several offers, and the book is still in print after what, 20 years.
Well, how did you hear from Bob? or his agent after you wrote it?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, his manager, whose name I can't mention,
Okay.
and I are good friends. I campaigned for all these years for the credits that we
Yeah.
got, so I could sleep at night.
Right.
Because I'd had these three guys. They were all alive when the credits were printed. Now Peter's gone and Chris is gone, but we had a party with the guy who invented our group, Blood on the Tracks. His name is Paul Metza from Minneapolis. And he did a video of the reunion. We played together, we spoke, and that was around the release of More Blood, More Tracks. And after that point, I took a deep breath and I said, okay, I'm done. That's my work is done here.
I was going to say.
Yeah, I can move on to something else. I do want to do other things. I want to write more about the railroad. There's this story I have to rewrite. And there's a lot of autobiographical stuff that I want to touch on, because there's more to all this than playing on Blood on the Tracks, playing Tangled Up in Blue. That may or may not be interesting. We'll see what happens.
Well,
when I finish something.
Two more things real quickly I wanted to mention.
Yeah.
In 2005, being inducted into the Minnesota Rock Country Hall of Fame. I didn't know they had one. Yep. Rock/Country Hall of Fame.
It has changed names a few times. And you can Google that picture too, that's up on the internet. That's almost everybody. Let's see now, who was not there? I think Bill Berg. No, he was there. And we went up just after that and played Duluth and Hibbing High School, 2004, 2005. But that was one of the Pantages Theater. We were all together for the first time. The whole mishpucha, everybody in the band was back together, and we put on a pretty good show, and it was sold out. And that's also up on the internet. You can find some of it on my YouTube channel. But I guess that's the story behind that. I do want to do more. I've got some life left in me, and I want to entertain. I want to write. The music it continues as a hobby, but I'm not pumping them out like I used to. I have a lot of stories written down from here or there. Some of it's fictional, and my agent doesn't like that. But so it'll have to be a fever dream or something like that. And just
something you
figure out how to present it.
Well, kind of coming to a close here. I think we talked about and went over a lot of areas. Anything else that we've omitted or that you'd like to mention or bring up? Or?
No, I had a good time. It's always fun to talk about it. It's a pleasant. It's the most pleasant 6 minutes of my career.
Right.
But I don't oversell it. It's nice to get a call and to be able to do an interview like this. I don't pursue it. If somebody wants to do it, like Jim McCarty, I'll say yes. I'm not terribly. I should be more busy than I am, writing memoirs or another story somehow. But we all feel like we're not doing enough, don't we? Really?
Right. We do. Well, I don't think the 6 minutes should define your life. That's why I wanted to talk about your solo albums and other things that have happened.
There is one that I didn't talk about that I'm proud of. It never really went to the stores or anything, but it's called the El Nino Suite.
Sweet. Okay. El Nino Suite. Yeah.
There's another suite that came later, 2017, and it is called Summer of Love.
Summer. Here we go. Summer of Love. Yes. Yes.
The best version of Summer of Love is on this one called Artifacts, but these are all available on my YouTube channel, as well as this one that I'm going to send you. So the best thing I think I ever did, it's 24 minutes long. The best record I ever made was this one, was
The El Nino Suite.
El Nino Suite. It tells a story. It's not a fictional story. It's a story about the Mariolitos coming into the United States from Cuba. And a bourgeois kid from the Midwest comes down to claim his grandfather's things, which of course include his boat.
Yeah.
And he winds up in trouble. So it's a story.
Well, I was going to say, and how timely with the immigration being such a huge thing right now, the subject of immigration, to revisit.
It's 10 years old. Yeah, it's a decade old, but that's my proudest music is there. That's all.
Okay.
That's it. That's as good as it gets. Summer of Love isn't bad either. But the versions of that appear on Artifacts are the best. The song itself is one of my favorite. Dear Aunt Phyllis, it's your favorite nephew Kevin. I stayed in San Francisco that summer.
Yeah.
Of 67, and so-called, I had an unknown cousin who I didn't meet until a few years ago. And he gave me his book about Vietnam. And he came back to the Bay Area on a ship home from Bien Hoa in Vietnam. And so I put these two characters together in San Francisco in the Summer of Love. And that's a story too. So those are fun things that I did that are musical, but I'm going in a non-musical direction from here. So thanks for having me. Appreciate
you're very welcome. You're very welcome, Kevin, and it's been very enjoyable. Again, I just like to have this forum to share your stories with people, and hopefully we'll get some newer viewers, newer fans through this. And it's always nice to hear from old fans, but yeah, maybe some newer ones. Go ahead.
And I continue to enjoy your videos. These are people who are just like me. Some of us, the Paul McCartneys of the world, made it. They made a splash. They turned it into a lifetime. A lot of the people like myself on your site have done other things to support this most expensive hobby. That's Michael. That's a Michael McDonald quote. He says, "This is Michael McDonald." It's an expensive hobby. So I have enjoyed all of that. I don't regret any single minute of my entire life spent playing music.
It's a part of you, so it's got to come out. That's what I hear.
Yeah, well, it does.
Yeah. All right. Well, Kevin, thanks again, and let's stay in touch. I'll send you once I edit a little bit. We know the parts that I need to edit. Okay, and I'll send you my address, and keep in touch, and all the best to you. And again, I'll send you a copy of this in a week or so. And then you can
much appreciated.
You can share it with people and let everybody know.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah, we'll put it up on.
Yeah, it'll be on my channel, but then you can put it on your social media.
You're doing a great job, and you're connecting me with old and new friends. All of these guys are the same, have the same passion,
Right.
And I love every minute of your videos. Thank you for doing them. Wonderful.
Well, thank you, Kevin. And again, you have a good rest of the weekend and a week ahead, and we'll be in touch. Okay.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank
Take
you.
care.